All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Planning Board. Notice that this meeting is published in the local papers and also posted in the lobby of this building. We are being broadcast live on Channel 34 and streamed live on YouTube. This meeting is a quasi-judicial proceeding, and we will be exercising powers and procedures that resemble a court of law. We are obligated to act objectively in determining facts and drawing conclusions, and those conclusions will be used to provide the basis for official action from the board. Questions or comments during these proceedings should be limited to only issues that the board may legitimately consider in reaching their decision, and decorum appropriate for a judicial hearing is expected to be maintained at all times. First up on our agenda this evening is our roll call.
Chair Wynn?
Here.
Vice Chair Brodock?
Here.
Mr. Schwartz?
Here.
Mr. Cook's excused. Counselor Schlager?
Here.
Miss Willis?
Here.
Mr. Rooney?
Here.
Mr. Ian Wally?
Here.
Miss Lockman?
Here.
Mr. Barr? Mr. Gilmer's excused. On behalf of Mr. Galvin, we have Peter Chicanius. Chicanius with us tonight.
That's correct.
All right. We have minutes from our November 18th meeting.
I didn't receive any changes to the minutes.
Clearly, I forgot to send it out then. I was just going to say add in the YouTube link.
Yep, I will add that.
Okay. And then I think under roll call where it said Chair Wynn arrived at 7:55, just add PM to that. And that was it.
Okay. Any other changes? Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. We have resolution from Grafton Inn.
I haven't received any comments or further changes to this resolution.
I don't have it in front of me, but I think the resolution said something about Egan's making a donation to the town. Is there any, is the donation expected to cover the cost of the trees or whatever they're planting? Oh, here you go.
Did you recall that was under the conditions? Or
I'm sorry, it's page 5, number 4, the top of the page. The applicant shall explore making a donation to the township to be earmarked for the planting of screening vegetation in this specific area. Is it the expectation that the donation will cover the full cost?
Yes.
Should you say that? She could donate a small
Okay,
amount, or she
she'll
could cover
explore
the...
making a donation covering the full cost.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. I'll make
And
that
I had one question, though, on page 3, number 2. Accessory structures shall be set back a minimum of 5 feet, isn't it? 6 feet?
Which,
Page 2, page 3, number 2.
okay. I think it's 6 feet in
Yeah.
residential zones. It's
Oh, only
5
5?
feet. This is the C2
Yes,
zone.
okay,
So,
yep, thank you.
are there any other changes to the resolution?
Yes, the resolution I'm looking at is titled, or name of the document is Compare Results 2 for Margaret. I apologize. Where's the section on again?
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's still in there. I don't know offhand.
Condition number 3.
Yeah. Are there any other changes? Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay.
All right, and that brings us... Thank you. Brings us to the application continuation for 37 Orange Road. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, yes. We're going to advance the committee reports to give the benefit of one of our board members the opportunity to participate in the discussion before he leaves, because he will recuse himself from the Orange Road application. So for committee reports,
Well, the master plan subcommittee met the weekend of December, on December 7th, and submitted a report summarizing the results of their meeting, which I believe was emailed to you today. That committee is comprised of Carmel, Carol, and Daniel Gilmer. So if you want to summarize.
Yeah, just by way of background, so on December 3rd, we were all sent an email asking if we wanted to participate in reviewing this demonstration project grant that Janice was going to be preparing. So since I had worked on the Safe Streets package with Carol and Dan, I agreed to volunteer for that. I thought it would be wise to get the comments of my fellow master plan subcommittee people, Dan and Carol. So we all met on a Saturday and looked at the grant proposal, and we developed a email that we sent to Janice with our comments and questions. And we also, at the same time, because we were looking at it, we again revisited the Safe Streets plan and had some comments and thoughts about that. So because we met on these two topics, we decided we would put together a subcommittee report, and that's what you're seeing here today.
Two points. First, I don't believe the board passed any kind of resolution saying that they approved the demonstration project based on where we were with Bike Montclair in the past. So I was very surprised to see the email saying that the board had agreed to a demonstration project. That's first. And second, where is this proposed demonstration project planned for?
The demonstration project is basically it's a technical assistance program where the township identifies 3 potential projects. It's run by the North Jersey Transportation Planning Association, and they review the application and work with the community to select one as a potential demonstration project. One of the requirements is that to receive the grant is that you create a working group comprised of the experts that are employed by the municipality, representatives from police, engineering, planning. They also encourage that representatives from the planning board and the council all work together on this, basically a steering committee for the demonstration project. And also that once the project's selected, special interest groups involved with that project, which may be the county, it may be a business or merchants association, also be pulled into it, and the Board of Education. The intent is really to get technical assistance in doing a demonstration project, then to get the word out and get the public to participate once the project is planned. So we're at the very beginning stages. We haven't even received it.
Well,
And that's why I said, is anybody on the planning board interested in participating?
I think we need to take a step back, because this board, many members of this board had issue with the underlying premise of portions of the Safe Streets plan, which was to make biking get equity as a transportation mode for parking, for autos and other modes of transportation here. And that was the underlying difficulty that prevented a full adoption of the report as it existed now. So, again, what is the street that and so your email that said this board agreed to a demonstration project is just not correct. We did not agree to that based on the difficulties we had with the biking portion of the report. The board fully supported the pedestrian safety aspects of the Safe Street Plan,
Right.
but we took issue based on the proposed elements within the report, such as bike lanes everywhere, that we had issues with the report. So your email, saying that we agreed to a demonstration project was just not correct. That's first. Second, what street, again, is being proposed for this demonstration project?
When working with other staff, we identified 3 potential projects. Watchung Plaza is one of them, the intersection of Watchung and Park Street, plus the intersection of Watchung and Grove, where there's been a lot of accidents. Pedestrian safety is of real concern at that location. We identified Glenridge Avenue, particularly Glenridge Avenue over by Forest Street and over by Grove Street, because again, there was a lot of accidents in those locations. There's some locations, and there's concern about pedestrian safety, particularly with the amount of development at those locations. And the third one that was discussed was North Mountain Avenue, South Mountain Avenue, which was one of the priority corridors identified in the draft Complete Streets Plan as a potential bike lane.
Which this board inherently had difficulty with because of the lack of width of the street. And therefore, the subcommittee's report now presented identifies issues that we feel should be presented to the council going forward for any project or any aspect of the report that is then being worked on.
Okay.
So I make a motion that we present the subcommittee's report as the will of the board here to the council in the event the municipality decides to proceed with any particular street or area that you've identified for a demonstration project going forward.
And let me just clarify that a demonstration project is temporary. It would only be for a week or 10 days or a month. It's not a long-term project. It's really just testing some of the recommendations in the plan.
Since the board had issue with some of the underlying premises within the plan, and that has still not been fully
In fact,
identified, again, I suggest that we adhere to the subcommittee's recommendations, that be presented to the council, and that any action that the municipality takes going forward be reflected of those particular recommendations going forward, and so that the council understands fully the range of issues that this board has concerns with. Motion on the table.
I'll second.
Before we vote, if I could just maybe add one thing. I think that's what you just brought up, Ms. Talley, is an important point, that a demonstration project is temporary. Because when I think of a demonstration project, I was thinking it was more long-term. Like, if I remember back to our previous discussions on this topic, I think Midland was thrown out as, why don't we try it on Midland and see how that works as a nice north-south connector that is very wide and doesn't have a lot of traffic, but it has enough that, we could test out some of the theories here. So if that's the case, I'd like to perhaps either revise the subcommittee report or add in our own comments saying we understand a demonstration project is, no more than a month or two or whatever it's supposed to be.
Well, that's not entirely accurate. It could be, if you look at the grant, it does give you other options as long as a year.
Right.
So again, these things have a way of taking a life of their own, and I think it's important that we present the issues and concerns up front so that everybody knows what's happening to start with. If I fully think Midland Avenue was a possibility, so was Montclair Avenue because of the width, But as you see, those were not put on the table for possibilities, and so these things tend to take a life of their own and come from left field, and board members don't have always input into this, so I think we should recommend or support the recommendations of the subcommittee as the will of the board. And if there are any other streets that we want to add in, so if we want to add in Midland Avenue, Montclair Avenue, anything else you can think of into that now, that's...
I liked what the recommendations were in this report. Rather than, for me personally, rather than get specific on which
Exactly.
streets to include, I like the recommendation of let's work together, let's talk to the town engineer, let's figure out what's going to make the most sense here.
Motion on the table for the board to present the full, the resolution as it stands to the council as the will of the board in relation to any demonstration project or any use of the Safe Streets plan at this time.
Can I just say one thing? I think we're kind of dancing around the issue that we really don't want to exchange parking for bike lanes. Am I correct? That may be the will of the board, that all we hear is the lack of parking in Montclair. And if you were to say to residents that we're going to take away the parking that's in front of your house, whether it's North Mountain or Grove or Midland, that I think that this would die a natural death. The public just doesn't want to lose their parking. And there's a small faction of people, and it would be nice to be able to have bike lanes, but I just don't think that that's the will of the community, from all that I've heard when I speak with people about this.
It seemed like you covered that in here.
Yeah,
Yes.
I
mean,
just want to emphasize that that's
No,
what
and I agree.
believe. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think that's point number 2 in
Yeah.
the email to Ms. Talley. And I mean, I agree that without, a lot of study and seeing is there a real benefit, and I don't necessarily see one at the moment, I would agree.
Is I correct that the discussion about Park Street and Watchung, that's with regard to pedestrian safety, not with regard to anything else at the moment? Is that correct?
That's pedestrian safety.
And as was noted in our report, we didn't have any problem with the recommendations for pedestrian safety, because we agreed
Right.
that most, they're
Yep.
very important.
Right.
So, Carmel, are you opposed to Martin's?
Oh, no. I think we should submit our subcommittee report to the council with the resolution that this is the will of the entire board, yeah.
With the amendment that demonstration projects can last no more than a year?
Well, I think, Janice, is that what you?
The whole
You're gonna
intent
be
is it's temporary.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the application itself, depending on what is, if we get selected and what's actually identified, it's going to be temporary. And some kind of project will only last, they use, traffic cones. That might only last a week
Okay.
if they're trying to create pedestrian refuge. They call them pedestrian refuges around an intersection. So it all depends upon the nature of the project.
So,
There's a motion and second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Anything else from the committees? Anything else?
I don't have anything.
All right, I think that's it.
Good evening, Mr. Ian Wally.
Yeah,
Have a good night.
thank you, Tony. All right. Now, we can get on to 37 Orange.
Just for the record, Mr. Ian Wally has left the meeting at 8 o'clock, and Mr. Barr arrived at 7:50.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Again, my name is Tom Troutner. I'm an attorney from Chiesa, Shaheni, and Gio Tomasi here on behalf of the applicant, HP 37. We appreciate the opportunity to continue our presentation. With that, our presentation this evening would be briefer than usual. We have with us tonight Dave Minow from Minow & Moscow Architects to respond to and continue testimony regarding architecture. There were some concerns expressed during prior testimony regarding the look that was being proposed as far as the architectural component, and the submitted in advance of this hearing was a revised architectural proposal. Mr. Minow will testify to that. We are intending in the next meeting, hopefully January 13th, to possibly complete, but at minimum get to traffic and parking. Towards that end, we had received a parking report from Level G from Mr. Giosa proposing a shared parking approach, which actually we're pleased to say, actually, I think that's what we're goes in the direction we're going in, and you'll see testimony we plan to submit in advance of that hearing, full submittal, so the board will have an opportunity to study it before we present testimony. So with that being said, Mr. Minow has already been sworn in, but I'd asked him to testify, and if we can swear him in again if necessary.
Yes, sir. Let me just put on my mic here. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
David Minow, M-I-N-N-O.
So, Mr. Minow, you've had an opportunity to submit an updated set of plans in conjunction with comments previously received from the board.
Yes.
And if you could you give the board an overview of what's being presented? And there's a PowerPoint, which is literally the exact same plans that were submitted to this board.
Yes. Last time we had a fairly lengthy discussion, if you remember, about the exterior materials and the color of those materials. Specifically the brick, which was more of a brown tone, and we tended to have a darker tone building. And there was a comment that the board would prefer to see buildings that were done more in a red brick, like much of Montclair. So we've made that change. There was also some comments about the elevation, the west elevation facing Orange Road, using this cementitious panels on the front elevation, and we have changed that to a lighter color masonry material or brick material. So the front elevation, which you see here on the board here on Orange Road, basically now just has two primary materials. It has a masonry using three different types of masonry, one being the cast stone at the base. The second would be the new reddish tone brick, and the third would be the lighter white brick, and that's set back slightly from the red brick, and that replaces the cementitious panels that we had before. So we've also gone to some little bit more traditional detailing around the area around the main entry to the project. You remember we had some metal fins with some inlaid wood paneling in those, and we've changed to much more of a traditional element with a metal slung canopy and a very nicely composed front entry element. I have a blow-up of this because I wanted to address some of the comments in Mr. Ross's memo, so I'll show you that in a minute. And we've continued that brick color around the Centroverde Drive side of the building, so we've continued that same detailing here on the corner, and then with the pilaster grouping in the center, and then the brick on the far right, on the lower end, moves to that red tone brick. Yes.
We can mark it. I actually don't know what the next one is.
I don't think I could grab my book.
So what I'd like to do is talk about the principal materials, which is one of the questions in the, let's see. Or let me go first to put these in context. So we redid the streetscape elevations as well. We wanted to show you our building in context with the other buildings. And if you look at the west elevation on the top, this is the Orange Road elevation showing the hotel.
Which sheet are you referring to specifically?
Sheet A09.
Okay.
But we've put our building, which is in the center, in context with the hotel on the left and the proposed design of the parking garage on the right. And then this is the Center Verde elevation here with the Valley and Bloom building on the right here. So I think seeing it in context shows that this building does fit into the context of the area. It does show, in my mind, a little bit more of a historic look, even though there's some contemporary sense to it than the buildings that are adjacent to it, which is something the board commented on as well.
And Mr. Minow, in the, I'm sorry, on that prior exhibit, on the top there in the center where you see the MC residences proposed,
Yes.
it looks like there's, is that a building in the background? I wanted to ask, it seems to be rising up a little bit higher in the, from a height perspective.
Yes. Yeah, the building behind is higher.
I mean, that's a very good point. How high will the building in the back be? It's almost as tall as the hotel, isn't it?
Well, that's not our building, that's the apartment building beyond.
Right. but
That's the
in
Valley
your-
and Bloom.
In your depiction,
I believe Valley and Bloom is six stories, if I have that correctly, and then where our
And the-
building is 4 stories.
and the hotel is 10, I guess.
Yeah.
8 plus 1.
Yeah.
So again, this particular drawing, which is, I believe in your set, it's sheet A10, is showing the redesigned corner element. And here we have a much more traditional element with French doors showing here with a balconette. We used more of a French door look here with divided light windows. In the past, we had full glass in that location and a glass balcony railing, so we've made that area more traditional. And this pilastered element is a very traditional element in the center. And I'm going to show you a blow-up in a minute of one of those elevations to address Mr. Ross's comment. But we do have detail here. We show a brick inset paneling. It's hard to see here, but you'll see it in the next exhibit. We have soldier courses just below the cornice and soldier courses just below this banding, soldier courses on the left-hand side, soldier courses and soldier courses at the top and bottom of the brick pilasters in the center of the drawing. So this area now has gotten to be a much more traditional look. Our canopy is a traditional metal canopy with a slung element. There are cables supporting it, 4 cables, 2 on the Orange Road side and 2 on the Center Verde side.
So just what's a soldier panel?
Soldier courses.
Yeah.
It's brick turned on end, so it's instead of brick horizontally. It's just giving another level of detail.
Oh, okay.
And I'll address that in just a minute.
And what's that tower top made of? Just
The what?
the tower, the top of the tower there? What's that made of?
This is metal panel.
Oh,
up
that's
here.
metal.
Yeah.
Okay.
The very top edge, though, there is a cast stone piece in the brick here, right at the top edge of the corner.
Mr. Minow, when you say brick, it's brick veneer, right?
It's full brick, it's not thin brick.
So it's a full brick.
Full brick.
Because it says brick veneer here.
If you look
Yeah,
on the
that's-
key.
That's the name for it. It's not, it's basically a 4-inch wide brick laid up just like would be on
Okay,
a home in the area or any other
okay, good.
traditional building.
But it
Thank
comes
you.
in sheets. No, to your point, it comes in sheets. You're not getting someone who's laying the bricks. Right, yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
that's-
that's.
There is something called a thin brick, which is
Yeah.
a very thin veneer brick. That's not what we're using. We're using a full brick. So this is just a blow-up. We've labeled this is not in the submitted set, but I did this today because I wanted to address Mr. Ross's memo, and we're thankful for that. One of the things that, and I spoke with Mr. Ross briefly, he had thought that the white brick in this area was stucco, and in his letter he commented on that. It was labeled as brick in the submission on the key plan, so it's just a misunderstanding. But one of the things that he talked about was brick corbelling, which is brick that progressively steps out, usually at a cornice line on a building, and he showed some photographic examples in his memo. And I spoke with him briefly, and we're willing to do, we're not trying to be a literal traditional building, but we're trying to pick up some of that detail, and we've already shown some, but we're willing on, you see a little bit of the soldier course here and here, and then located at the column capitals and the column bases. We're willing to step that out so that it creates a shadow line, giving the impression of corbelling. We'll make that change in response to Mr. Ross's memo. I think that's a good comment. I think it'll show a little bit better. But again, we're not trying to be the literal, turn-of-the-century building with a stepped cornice per se. So
The primary issue in Mr. Ross's memo seems to be the south-facing facade. We continue to use fiber cement panels, which he notes really looks what's been done with some very positive steps on the west-facing facade. His recommendation is that you continue brickwork on that side of the building. And you propose to do that so that you are more in keeping with section 4.2, I believe, 2 of the Gateway Redevelopment Plan, which asks you to adhere to the underlying downtown 4.2.1, the massing that harmonizes with the character of Montclair Center and basically Montclair Town Center historic district.
Sure. I'm not trying to put you off, and I will address your question. I think it's a good question. I want to just go to the percentage of materials exhibit, and then I'm going to come back to that and address that question. So if you look at the top diagram, this is a diagram that's done to calculate. This isn't what the building looks like. This is just done to calculate the primary materials. And what we're showing here on the Orange Road side is really just 2 primary materials, as I mentioned. The reddish colors are different. It's just a diagram, different forms of masonry. We had the cast stone, the red brick, and the white brick. And we have shown there 83% of the front facade is masonry veneer, and then 17% is metal panel. So we now have 2 primary materials on the front side. When you go to the Centro Verde Road side, we have 61% masonry, 26% fiber cement, and 13% metal panel. So getting back to that comment, let me go back to the first exhibit.
I'm sorry, my mic wasn't on when I made that comment. But so we're clear and just to save time, while quoting percentages is nice for building a record, it's really the overall takeaway of the building that I think is what is impacting when people drive by and walk by. And so again, I think what Mr. Ross is saying, and he may want to step up here and get into it a little more, is that the use of brick now on the western orange-facing side, appears much more to harmonize under Section 4.2.1 with the Gateway Redevelopment Plan. And he, I believe, is recommending that you maintain those same materials on the south-facing side. I think that's the essence of the issues remaining in his memo.
Yeah, okay, I'll address that. I think that number one, we are compliant. Centro Verde is a little bit more of an alley street. It's more of I would term it a little bit more of a service street than certainly Orange Road, which is more of a main street in town. And the view to that is limited. We're returning the masonry around the corner and on the ground floor. So your view of this elevation driving down Orange Road is cut off somewhat by the garage. You see it's a fairly narrow right-of-way here. So as somebody's moving down, the long end of the Centro Verde Road elevation, which is shown here, is cut off and becomes, in my mind, from an urban design point, less important. But it does harmonize with the building adjacent to it. The Valley and Bloom building does have cementitious panel, and on this elevation and on this street, it does harmonize with this building. So we have three primary materials on the Centro Verde Road side, which do harmonize with that side of the street. And that's really our rationale for that.
So let's try that again.
What is the basis for not putting brick in that location? Is it design-based or is it cost-based?
It's both.
Well,
It's,
Mr. Minow, just so I'm clear, because I may be confused, if we're talking about the side facing Centro Verde Drive, and I'm looking at A10, your perspective, there is brick on facing Centro Verde Drive, isn't there?
there is brick, but I think what Mr. Schwartz is referring to is the whitish color area here
Yep.
and this other color.
Yep.
That is cementitious panel. And I think what he's suggesting, he's asking the question, the same way in which we created this area here on the front elevation along Orange Road, why didn't we do the same thing here? And I think the answer is twofold. The answer is that what I said before, it does relate to the Valley and Bloom building. And number two, it is a cost issue. It's a less primary elevation. It's not very visible from the public, either driving or pedestrian. And because it is a narrow service street. So the answer is twofold. It's both cost and that it is in context. Those are the two answers.
And looking at Mr. Ross's December 9th memo, and it may be that Mr. Schwartz's question is somewhat, or at least I'm reading is possibly somewhat distinct from Mr. Ross's point. I think Mr. Ross you spoke to this earlier, there's a statement is a contrasting design with smooth stucco facing Orange Road and fiber cement facing Centro Verde Drive, and that was perhaps a confusion regarding the materials as opposed to
That's correct.
what we're talking about now.
That's correct. I mean, he could he can verify himself, but yeah, I think that there just was a misreading of the front elevation.
So I have a question about the metal panels. How do they hold up? They seem to be relatively recent material that's used in construction.
Yeah, they hold up very well, actually. They're not thin. They're not like a little thin piece of aluminum trim. They're a heavy gauge panel with great joint work. We use it quite a bit. It's a very expensive material. It's more expensive than brick in terms of its application. So it's not a cheap way out of anything. It's really done as an accent. And in a downtown situation, I think it's a very
Does it
appropriate.
tend to get dirty? Like dirt sticks in the
Well,
crevices, and then I've seen some of the buildings along
like
Bloomfield Avenue.
any building material over time, dirt does
No, I
attach to
know,
it,
but it
needs to be
seems-
maintained. But one of the things that I think will help in terms of our metal panel is that it is already a grayish material. And it's not a white metal panel or a silver metal panel, reflective. It's a gray metal panel.
All I'm saying is that sometimes you see these panels and there's like a drip effect of dirt that comes down, and it's pretty unattractive.
Again,
I'm just asking,
it's a
yeah.
material that can be power washed and maintained, just as the rest of the facade
Yeah,
should be.
whereas brick tends to absorb that dirt, and you can't really, the brick seems to absorb any kind of dirt. It doesn't look like it's, flowing down in like stalactites.
I'm sure they're cheaper metal panel buildings, but
Okay.
we're going to use a high quality.
Okay. And my other question is on, in the front facade, Orange Road facade, it looks very white, the
Yeah, I
fiber.
can, actually, I brought a panel.
Because, if anybody's seen the hospital building, the bottom of it is very white, same kind of stuff, and it looks kind of out of place, I think. A darker grayish or something might look nicer, yeah.
So
Very
we should
pale.
probably
It's very
mark-
pale, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
A51 then?
Yeah, I think that would be A51.
So,
A51.
A51?
Yes.
Okay. So referring to A51, this is a new material sample panel. This is the red color brick, and it does, even though it may look from that distance like it's a consistent panel, there is a little bit darker panel in this red than this red. So it gives a nice flash to the building.
Variations of the.
There is variation in the panel. This is a more consistent brick, and we chose that for a reason to have that white outward piece be consistently white. And this is a very high-quality brick, smooth finish, same type of finish as this brick. So it is a light color, but it's slightly off. It's maybe a tan gray-white. And then these are the two colors of fiber cement panel that we would be using on Central Verde Drive. These are the aluminum storefront windows, which is a dark black color. This is composite metal panel 1 and 2. We have 2 different locations. They're noted on the elevations and called out where the 2 different colors are. So
These particular blocks down here, is that cast stone or are those fiber cement?
those are cast stone, and this is this piece in the middle is a sample of the color for the cast stone.
Is that matching the hotel?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Because it's interesting, the hotel was actually supposed to have a darker base cast stone. I had this discussion with Ira Smith, the township's redevelopment consultant, and for some reason, it did not reflect the exact piece that we had matched. It came in lighter, but it then matched Valley and Bloom, but I think it just got away from everybody and it was let go. So I'm curious whether or not you are matching the hotel cast stone.
I don't know. I can't say the answer for that.
Well, who picked that piece?
We did.
Okay.
So the 2 colors, the 2 shades of fiber cement panel, you said, for Central Verde Drive,
Yeah.
where
Yeah,
are the 2 colors?
There's one color here, and then further back, there's a second color.
And aren't those windows a different color? The windows that jut out, so you have 3 metal panel colors. You have that pinkish, and then the gray,
Yeah,
the dark brown, and then the light
Right.
white,
It
yeah.
doesn't
Right.
look
The pinkish color, believe it or not, that's just a bad representation.
Oh,
Yeah,
This
that's
color,
taupe.
This is the second color.
One's taupe,
And this is
one's
the
brown.
lighter color, which you would see in the center here.
okay. And that brown is the windows in the upper corner there?
Yeah.
And are those the bricks, what look like bricks, are those just cement blocks like you see on, I guess it's Valley and Bloom?
Are you talking about
The cement blocks at the base.
yes, it's larger format. It's generally 12 by 24, and it has a chamfered edge on it. They chamfer the edge so that when you put 2 blocks together, it has a nice V-joint.
Yeah, they seem to have concrete cinder blocks, yeah,
On the hotel.
yes.
This is-
But
this
that's
is
not
different.
what you have,
This is
yeah.
different. This will look more like,
Brownstone, so to speak.
well, like a Indiana limestone. That's what it's
That means-
supposed to mimic. It's a full, again, it's not a face material, it's a full 4-inch. It's laid up by a mason the same way brick would be laid up.
Okay.
It's a great material for street level. And that's why we use a lot of it there. It's very durable.
All right, so if we can go to, let's see, which one is this? A08. And we're looking on the Central Verde elevation, the
Yes.
southern elevation. And so the very light-colored panels that are in between the red brick on the upper floors is the largest block on your sample.
Correct, it's the one on the bottom right.
Okay. And you're saying that on this drawing, and I believe on your drawing, if you go towards the east side of the building, you have those pinkish panels?
Yeah,
That's really this gray that's down here?
yes, unfortunately, I just got, when it got colored, it got translated a little poorly for the reproduction, but we're,
Yeah, that doesn't, well, and those kinds of things really make it difficult for
I'm
us
sorry.
to see, because, you know, we've got to imagine what this building is going to look
Sure.
like. And so, again, we've seen buildings go up in town where we get presented with one
Sure.
picture, and then the actual building is a different, it looks different.
Well,
So,
we'll
so
do-
let's continue, though, with
Oh,
that
but-
side. If you go to where, towards the opposite side of the building, where you have the corner piece where the brick
Correct.
is, and then you have darker color panels in between the brick and the beige. What's that? And also, it goes also along the top course, at least halfway down the building.
not quite sure what you're referring to.
You
but
see where the brick ends
Right
on the
in
corner,
Here?
right there, and also along what would be a cornice line, there's an extension that goes to the first, thank you, Keith.
I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, that's,
And then and then going vertically, adjacent to the brick. That's a third color. What's that?
you're talking about this piece? That's a shadow. That's just a shadow.
And it's a shadow along the top also?
No. That would be a cap along the top.
Your cap is the same color as the shadow? Again, you know, this drawing is, I'm trying to understand your drawing.
Yeah, really.
The drawing isn't really, it's not labeled well, and it's, when I see your samples, you know, so,
Listen,
okay, so let me ask you, just continuing along there. There is no cornice because that dark line only goes to about halfway down the building. So the other half, where the roof line juts up a little bit, and then where it goes along that last quarter portion, there is no shadow in that band that's still defined adjacent to that shadow line. Is it the same, or is there a difference there?
I can't follow your description. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just can't follow. If you want to point to it, I can maybe.
Sure. Come a little closer.
Sure.
Yeah, can you grab?
You have this shadow line along here.
No, that's not a shadow line. That's a cap.
That's a cap. Is there a cap here and a cap here also?
Yeah.
Of course, those are different colors, depicted as different colors on the drawing. So this which is the same color as your cap. This piece here, which is the same color as your cap, that's the shadow.
That's a shadow.
But this is the cap. And this cap extends along here.
That's correct. Listen, what I will do, and there have been a couple questions along this line.
Just leave it.
I think there's a concern that we're going to present one thing and do another thing. What I'll do is, I'll provide to the board exact cuts on these brick and the materials here with color, manufacturer, that type of information, so that you have that in the record. And
Those brick. Yeah.
those-
I'd rather you correct your drawing, because your drawing is going to be a part of the record, and when we go back, if there's an issue, the first thing that we go back to are the drawings.
Okay.
Now,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and just continuing now, question. The grills on the street level, where the parking is, those are grills along Centro Verde, right?
Right.
What are those again? How are they, what do they look like?
They're metal screen grills that allow airflow through them.
Right, but exactly what kind of screens are, do we have a sample?
No. I can provide one.
And they're metal, what are they? They look like, it almost looks like a chain link fence grid here.
No. it's
So,
not.
so.
It'll
is
be
it-
more decorative than that.
It'll be more decorative.
Sure.
You'll provide us with a
Yeah,
sample.
We don't want it to be an ugly building.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, thank you. So Chair One has, he has put this on his laptop and he expanded it to this. What a difference this than to what we're looking at up there. It's like a totally different scenario here. I mean, right? I mean, look at that. Is there any way that we could get that little drawing larger, like Chair Wins has here? It's totally different.
Maybe one facade per page,
Yeah,
so that we can see the detail?
I mean,
Is it the orange side?
yeah.
About the
Look
same
at
size
this.
as that, but-
I mean, it's very,
I mean, I think.
that's why when Chair Wynn said this is pink, has a pink tone, I mean, it's very different, don't you
Yeah.
agree?
Martin has his colorblind, so he
I
has.
think if you also provide, Mr. Minnow,
He has
I mean,
provide
it's
full-size
just such a
plan.
different perspective.
I think the board would
The building
appreciate
for
full-size
this.
Well, do you want
plans
them to blow it up on the screen
instead of
here?
11 by 7.
Or
Somewhere.
submit
It's very
a
expensive
large
to
size
print
drawing of it?
full-size colored drawings for.
Okay. All right, I have it here.
I can't.
That's probably.
Board members, very quickly, if we can kind of just,
On the big drawing?
so just for the betterment of the record, I think because if there's, the applicant's talking, Janice's talking, everybody's talking, the record gets a little mumbo jumbled, so can we just kind of try and keep it one or two people at a time, just so we can just kind of preserve the record and keep it
help?
consistent?
I just blew it up on the screen. Does that help? Okay. All right.
I guess it doesn't. It doesn't help us from the standpoint that screen's a bit far away, so it would help to have larger drawings in front of us. And we have these small reproductions, but the small reproductions can be short on some of the detail, that's all. We're relying on your drawings to let us know what this is going to look like. And we rely on what we see, we rely on the colors. And even though you might have labels and nice little arrows drawn with minuscule little indications about what materials might be, we're looking at the pictures, okay? Think of us as needs to be kiddie book quality, because we need the picture to be accurate, because that's what we're looking at. That's what we're picturing when we're trying to make a determination as to what the building is going to look like and what the elevation is going to look like. So in addition, will there be samples of the other metalwork that is on the building? You have, I guess, grills for the windows, balconies, Juliets, or
No, the
any
balcony,
combination of there?
The balcony, I think, we called out here with the aluminum railing system would be black. Black is black. So that's what the aluminum railing color is?
The design of the railing is going to look as it's depicted on the drawing?
Yes.
Yeah, and, again, I agree. If I blow it up, when I blow it up, when it's little, it looks like there's a top rail, and then it looks like there's another little rail that runs underneath it when it's small, but when you blow it up, you see that that's actually the line for the window that's supposed to be behind the rail. I thought it was, when I first looked at it, I thought it was two rails also. So again, this is not to beat a dead horse here or put too fine a point on it, but this is why it makes a difference for us, in order to have adequate sized drawings and to have the detail correct.
Can I ask a question? Can you talk about
Now, you want to see.
what the step backs are? Or it looks like the buildings jut out at
That's why
portions,
it's kind
and
of switched over to the,
can you talk about that a little bit?
so this is the front.
Sure.
Which side did you want to see?
So you started the bottom, that, the ledge thing there.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of movement in the building.
Yeah, there's a lot of-
Generally where you see shadow lines, but
Mr. Mayor, can you
Mr. Ma-
use the microphone, please? There's a handheld. You just have to turn it on. Press the push button.
So, for instance, this pilastered element, this is set out in front of the brickwork, the white brickwork behind it.
Yeah, how far?
I don't know exactly because we haven't done the construction drawings, but I'm giving you
Ah, okay,
a sense that it will be in front of it.
yeah.
It's presumption, I mean, we're going to design construction drawings of this entire building and submit to the building department. We'll have all those details, but this element, which is the area over the front entry, is pulled out from the brick wall, and the cornice of that entry statement is pulled out and angled, and it will step. There'll be some corbelling of the brick that's inset in there. Each one of these trim lines at the base and the pilasters at the storefront, they're all set out from the glass. It's not even with the glass. On the Centro Verde side,
Well, the
All-
upper left bit there, the upper left, those
upper
windows,
left,
they
this
stick out
box
too?
window, this box window is set out from the brick panel behind it.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I've noticed on the Bay Street deck, one of our train station decks, also on the facade of the Sienna building, that there are some, this light-colored brickwork gets dirty, and in the case by Bay Street, there's some rust stains that have come down from some metal trim. Can these light surfaces be power washed, if that should happen here?
Yes,
So it would withstand that?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
That was my point before, the same
Yeah.
point. You see the dirt coming down from a
Oh,
lot of
I'm
these
sorry, I
buildings.
didn't hear it.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
We see it quite often on some buildings, yeah. Okay.
I just have an aesthetic question, sorry. It seems like you're combining two styles. The upper portion of the building seems more modern, and then the base has this, kind of old-fashioned look to it. And we have an example of a building in town that's that kind of amalgamation of two styles. And to me, it looks weird. And this is giving me that same vibe. It looks a little like either you're going to go with a modern building with some, some, I guess, suggestion of the other buildings around it, or you're going to go with a traditional, pre-war apartment building. This seems to be a combination of both.
Yeah,
That to me
it
doesn't
is.
work, honestly.
You've picked it out
Yeah.
exactly. We've intended it to be a little bit of a modern interpretation of a traditionally based building, and this is what I think you've got a lot of in the newer buildings in Montclair. So,
Which Carmel is saying is not working.
Yeah,
That's her point.
Yeah.
that's what we heard from you last time, so I responded to that, and I made the building much more traditional than it was.
Agreed.
But it's half and half.
It's a much improved scenario than before,
Yeah.
but it's still
But we are conforming. We are conforming to the ordinance, we're conforming to the styles, to the materials.
That's a matter for the board to interpret,
Okay.
wouldn't you say?
I think your architectural consultant might want to contribute to that as well.
I'm glad you said that, because that was exactly what I was thinking, that
Yeah.
he should come up and comment too,
I-
based on your presentation.
I think, I'm just going to back up, I think that this is going to be a very attractive building. It's going to be a little jewel box in this area, and I'm very excited to see it built. It's not like this building has been compromised. I think the comments that you all made last time have improved it. I think the comments from your architectural consultant have improved it. We're going to continue to improve it with the things I mentioned tonight, the corbelling and things like that, to give it even more shadow and detail. And I think these drawings are very good. I'll improve them so that you can see them at a larger scale and be a little clearer in the call-outs of the materials. But I'm very proud of this building. I think it's going to be a great building for Montclair. I just have to say that. And I do a lot of downtown buildings around the state, and this is one of the best that we've worked on, so I'm really proud of it.
I'm going to say I think you missed an opportunity. You have Orange Road, which is a, major road that people will be walking on, going to the hotel, going, to Valley and Bloom. And then you have a side street, Centro Verde almost, a little alley, that if you had put the garage entrance, the transformer entrance, and kept the front on Orange Road as totally a beautiful streetscape that was attractive for people to wander into stores there or, whatever. But the serviceable things, in my view, should have been put on Centro Verde. Just a comment.
Understood. Actually, we would need the engineer to comment in response, but there were actually engineering reasons that would preclude the garage entrance being on Central Verde, among others. That's not
And the
just-
transformer.
It's not an architectural aesthetic
Okay.
question solely.
It just seems a missed opportunity that you have this, we don't often get alleys where you could put a lot of the service stuff on rather than the main street, but.
So the one question I had was there were a couple of memos from the fire official, and I didn't know if you were going to tackle those this evening, or would that be for a subsequent hearing?
So I was actually going to speak to this because it's not really architecture, but on that point, I can, actually, there were three things I can actually raise. One, and if I refer you to A10, it's a little bit unorthodox, but I was virtually going to ask for a kind of a straw poll on this. There's a comment in NV5's review letter, and this came up at the prior board meeting. There is an 8-foot wide indent in the public plaza in front of the building, right around where you see the blue car. It says MC Residences, and that was intended kind of as a drop-off for Uber, Lyft, or other sort of short-term comings and goings at the MC Residences. There had been some question about whether or not that was really the best use of the space and the site, and so here comes the straw poll. We could pull the sidewalk forward to be uniform in length. I think, I forget the exact amount of feet, but basically you would have then a conforming sort of pedestrian plaza going across without that indented drop-off area. And it's one of those, we like the drop-off area. We think it makes sense, but obviously, not in the face of the board, which obviously has a lot of understanding as to what works in the community and what doesn't, thinks it doesn't work. We're happy to change that to conform to what the board thinks is in the best interest of the community. So I throw that out there. That's really an engineering question, but there is obviously some aesthetic component to it. We did receive comments from the fire official. Additionally, the fire connection point in the building can be moved from where it is to the satisfaction of the fire official, and we can make that a condition of approval. And then similarly, I think there was a comment regarding the fire question of the needing a minimum distance to a fire hydrant. I don't know the exact measurements right now, but we'd make that a will comply as a condition of approval, and if necessary, we would add a hydrant.
Those actually were the ones, so I appreciate you going through those. The one that I thought might be more related to the architecture is the fire official's memo dated November 4th, which states essentially that both the north and south side of Central Verde Drive would have to be fire lanes. And so what's the impact of the current indent, shown on A10 on the screen here, on Central Verde Drive, in terms of, we spent a lot of time during this application discussing load out, load in for moving, FedEx, other larger delivery vehicles. How does the fire official's determination affect perhaps even the layout of this building?
Excuse me, just one.
Sure.
Just want to confirm that.
So, Keith, what's the impact of having a fire lane? How does it affect the Centro Verde?
I would imagine you can't park a truck there. I mean,
With the indentation, if it were bigger? Or?
Well, it says truck parking in the cutout will be limited to 5 minutes only,
5 minutes only? Oh,
according to the fire officials
By,
memo.
I think by code of a fire zone, by code for a fire lane.
Yeah, one of the, so,
Turnover's faster.
Mr. Burdock, so to answer your question, so that indent for the loading on Central Verde Drive, so the answer is twofold. One, it's that actual indent is outside of the roadway, so it's not actually, we don't believe it's interfering with the fire lane. But one of the, and this actually comes with the fire connection, one of the concepts to potentially reach an accord with the fire official was to potentially actually move that loading so that it doesn't, you wouldn't have loading taking place obstructing the fire connection. So in other words, the loading may actually move a little further into the block on Central Verde Drive. But obviously, we need to resolve that with the fire official still.
Sure. So you're saying that your premise is that the fire lane itself essentially doesn't go into that indent and continues, say, the northern curb line right along?
Yes.
Okay. And so you could theoretically then park a truck on the opposite, kind of within.
So right. So I guess theoretically, as I understand it, the truck could theoretically be blocking the fire truck if parked there would actually block the loading.
The
if
loading
something
truck
was actually inside the loading.
Okay.
But that's why you would either move the loading away from the existing fire conjunction box or move the fire conjunction box so that you wouldn't have the theoretical problem of a fire truck is sitting there and then can't connect to the building because there's a loading truck obstructing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get that. I think, to me, it seems like it's easier to move the fire connection, and I'm
That's why I'm saying I don't know exactly
Okay.
what the solution's going to be. I don't want to.
But you'll resolve that for the next
Yes,
time?
yes.
Okay, great. That's really what I want to get to, because I think, to me, that has a bit of an impact on whether, the board would like to see the indent along Orange Road. Because I think if there's no indent on Central Verde Drive because of what the fire official has to say, I would lean towards not having the indent on Orange Road, because I would think that's where you would then park moving trucks, FedEx trucks, right in front of this really nice building that Mr. Minow is so proud of. It would look like having a huge truck in front of it for a significant portion of time.
I had one other point that I wanted to address. It was a question I got last time. I think it was from a member of the public related to the sound coming from the transformer room on the sidewalk. And what we did, this is a similar size, similar type of transformer room that we would have. And we took, this is a built, constructed project in Harrison, New Jersey. And we took readings out in front of this, and I'll show you the decibel. So these are a little bit interesting to follow. These decibel readings were on the sidewalk, somebody walking right in front of that facility. And the project is Irby Harrison in Harrison, New Jersey at 5 p.m. on November 14th. And what they show is the first reading, and these are like a minute or two apart, shows 63.2 decibels, 63.5, and 64.2. To help you as a layperson understand that, normal conversation is around 65 decibels. A quiet office atmosphere, that you'd be working in a typical office environment, would be 65 decibels. So we don't believe that the low hum that comes from this would be any interference to our good neighbors across the street or to really anyone on the sidewalk or near the retail spaces or the entry to the building. So we just wanted to confirm that there's not a lot of sound generated out of this type of transformer room. So
Mr. Troutner, this should be marked into evidence.
Yeah. Is this
Sure.
is this part of the same PowerPoint that we've actually, because it may be part of, we can remark it.
This has not been submitted, I'm just giving it to you tonight. I give you this.
Council, in that case, then yes, it should, because
so
if
let's mark this.
those decibels would definitely,
We'll give
those
you a
decibels
copy
would
of
definitely
the,
have to be marked along with that picture in conjunction
We'll
with
give
how
you
it
a
looked.
copy of the thumb drive.
That'd be good.
A52.
This would be A52.
Did you happen to take any readings from inside the transformer room?
No. It was locked and we could not get in. This was right out in front of it. In the picture you saw there, it was standing on that sidewalk.
No, I understand. I mean, I don't know how good cell phones are for decibel meters. I mean, I use one, but I've never held it up to an actual calibrated noise meter. So I kind of wonder, just looking at it, I understand your depiction of what the decibel meters show or the decibel levels show, but to just kind of look at comparison to inside versus outside to get an idea of the attenuation
What
would be helpful.
I'm just not sure, how would that help you if you got an inside reading of something that was enclosed in a masonry room?
I don't understand the attenuation.
And if you know the equipment has a certain decibel rating from the manufacturer, then you take a reading on a cell phone that you don't have calibration of immediately adjacent to it, then you give you a good value for calibrating it
Okay.
by your own methods.
Well, we can try to do that. I guess we're doing this just as a courtesy because the question came up. There's no standard for this, but we just did it because we wanted to try to satisfy you that the noise is minimal.
I appreciate it. I'm just, I'm thinking, is my phone going to read 63 or will it read 75? And I don't know the answer to that.
On Bloomfield Avenue,
I'm sorry?
on Bloomfield Avenue, we have a hole, a gap in the buildings where the Thai Chef restaurant currently is, where you have a one-story building. So you're going to see part of the northern elevation of this building from Bloomfield Avenue. I'm not sure exactly how much is going to be seen, and I'm not sure what it's going to look like framed by the plain sides of Central Verde and the hotel, because both of those facades are rather drab also. So I think you should give us an elevation from the north side of Bloomfield Avenue, where the car dealership is, looking through that gap so that we can see what portion of the building is visible to traffic on Bloomfield Avenue, because we don't know how long Thai Chef is going to be there. I mean, it could be there forever. It could go away and a new building could be, put up there and totally obscure the view. But right now, we've got a restaurant and we've got a gap and we've got a nice picture frame view of the back of this building. And the north elevation, from what I can see on previous A08 from the October 7th submission, it's just fiber cement. Covering, pretty drab, looks like the rear portion on Central Verde. But I would like to see what a practical elevation from the street to see what we're dealing with, if it's a concern or not. Right now, I'm not really sure. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Did you want to take your straw poll?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you said that, because I actually was going to come back, because I should clarify. So the loading area on Central Verde, which is that indent you see on Central Verde, there will be one. It's just a question of where precisely it'll be located along Central Verde. But the question then becomes really on Orange Road, and I know Mr. Brodak indicated it would potentially impact his thinking, but I just under the assumption that there will be a loading area created on Central Verde that will remain, whether it's a few feet to the south or north. what is the, I guess, what's the thinking in terms of the drop-off location?
I'll start.
Yeah, sure.
Why not? I don't like the indentation in Orange Road. I
Okay.
like the idea of a nice wide sidewalk and, sidewalk activity. I think that would make a more handsome street frontage. And then cars coming and going, and big panel trucks coming and going. I mean, there's a lot of activity and delivery these days, so I'd say no. I win, nobody else says anything.
Is there parking on Orange Road there right now?
No, there's not.
There's not.
There's
And so
not.
there won't be any parking, it's just a loading
Well-
and drop-off zone.
That's a question that Mr. Rebecki brought up, that technically you could park there.
I thought it
No,
was.
it's no, there says no parking. It's signed, and
Well,
historically,
there's-
it's signed no parking.
But he was
Because
saying
of-
that that was wrong, that if you look at the ordinance, that there could be parking along Orange Road.
I mean, there's no parking there now because of the gas station and
Yeah.
the ins and outs and the curb cuts. But if
Right.
it's just technically, there is parking on that side of Orange Road.
Actually, there is not.
There isn't? Is it on the other side? Or there's no parking on either side of Orange Road?
No, there's some parking in,
Parking on the side where Montclair Hotel
Ma'am,
is.
ma'am.
On
It's-
the opposite side, there's some very little parking there because there's no
Ma'am.
stop.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's,
No,
o-
never mind.
thank you for the clarification. All right, so, if there is, the only thing is that I agree with you that a nice wide sidewalk is great.
Desirable.
However, with both residential and commercial activity there, and seeing as how Orange Road is only so wide, and that the parking is on the other side of the street, so potentially there could be cars parked on the other side of the street. So if people are dropping off people or letting, it could cause, there could be an advantage to having a bit of a curb cut there so that people can kind of get out of the way of traffic while they're dropping somebody off to go into their home or to go into the store or whatever, because you know how people do. From a practical standpoint, people just, hey, the door is here, I'm gonna park here, I'm gonna wait for you to come out. Meet me I'm downstairs, come, or let me just run into the store here, or I'll send my friend, companion, child, you name it, into there, get what I need, and they'll come out and I'll be sitting here. And Orange Road, like I said, is not that wide at that point to begin. There is a lot of traffic that comes down there. So that's the only benefit that I could see, but,
One other thing I should add, and I'm not advocating one way or the other, but just in terms of clarification, in terms of the sidewalk or public plaza width, where that blue car is approximately located, I think there was previous testimony of this, but from the curb to the facade is about 19 feet, so that's a pretty significant depth.
Yeah.
Now, it would be, if we got rid of it, it would bump up to, if you see where the people are sort of sitting at the tables near where it says Orange Road Market, that's about 30 feet from the curb to the...
Yeah, and see, and right now, like, when I look at the current width of Central Verde, and look at where the parking garage is, and look at where the curb is, as you're coming down Orange Road, yeah, you get a very truncated view of the side of the building. But this building is pulled back from Central Verde, how many feet?
Well, that would be at the 30 feet from, at Central Verde, I'm sorry.
Yeah, on Central Verde. It's not 19, but there is a, maybe 15, 12 to 15?
It's at least that, and I apologize. I don't
I
have
think
Yeah.
the front yard setback is 15 feet. So it's 15 feet from the property line.
Right. So you're going to be able to see more of the building. And I guess going Martin's comment, we have seen construction and had proposals about, well, this is not a primary facade. You're only going to, this is on the main street. Very good example, the Montclairian 2.
Right.
You see a gorgeous Bloomfield Avenue facade. When you go down Pine Street,
Right.
you look at the back of it and you see panels that kind of mimic the front, but it looks like a cheap imitation. of the front. And you get a good view of it, even though it's not, you don't see 100% of it, but you see enough of it so that, you can really draw the contrast between how good the building looks in the front and how cheap it looks in the back, and again, we have seen on other projects, and I won't go into them, where we've tried to buy into that theory, and when the building goes up and we look at it, we're disappointed. So we're trying to correct that and get past that. We try and be reasonable, but we are concerned about, you've brought the Orange Road facade up very nicely, but then you're going to see on one side, you're going to see a cheap imitation almost of just a portion of it, because you got some brick on there, and it's like, well, you only need another, if I'm remembering the statistics correctly, 60% as opposed to 80%. So you only got another 20% more brick you got to add to that side. It just how when you're able to get a good look and frame both sides together, you can contrast them, and it really takes away from the building. It's it's like Central Verde, and the Sienna, you see them from the front, but when you go around the back and it's like, oh, is that the same building? And luckily they don't stand alone, but I mean, Central Verde, unfortunately, you see a lot of it from Orange Road, and that was very disappointing to me, just how much of it you see from Orange Road and just how it looks, so. With that said, it would be good to, that's why we need a good understanding of how these buildings look in the 360.
I think we should hear from our architectural consultant, because he made that exact point in his comments, and I think we're trying to correct some of the imbalances of the past. Perhaps the redevelopment plan drafting was not updated, in certain spots fully, but clearly in other places it does. In section 4.2.1, it very clearly reflects the goal and intent of the governing body, and perhaps in some of the materials still allowed and selected, there was not enough editing, but I think if the intent is to get a good building approved and support the public good, the consensus of the board is appearing here, and I'm hopeful the applicant listens, and despite what they might want to do, the deciding bodies seem to be moving in a particular direction. I hope the applicant hears that. That said, perhaps we should hear from our architectural consultant.
Actually, I'm sorry, I have no objection, actually, Mr. Ross being heard, but I just wanted to see if we could finish on the
poll.
Yeah. Exactly.
Did we ever conclude whether there was or was not a bus stop northbound at the corner of this building? I believe Ms. Millette brought that up at the last hearing.
But I believe there is.
There is?
Yeah. Right, it's on the other side of the street.
It's southbound.
Yes.
Where's the cutout?
Well, sorry, but I had written down that there was
No,
one
just
northbound
on,
as well,
Orange,
so
I
I,
think.
At the other end of the block.
I think just on Orange. The other one is going to be
Okay.
Not right.
Okay.
That's my,
provided the fire
So you
code permits.
wanted a straw poll? Is that what you
No,
were
but why
saying?
don't finish up at the bus stop? Where is that bus stop?
well, because that, to me, I think impacts this question. That's why I want to bring that up.
I don't have any objection to this, if she knows, if she wants to come forward.
Come on forward and let's get you on the record so that our attorney doesn't have a meltdown, and we can keep the record straight.
Nicole Millette, 14 Orange Road.
Great. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And please spell your last name for the record.
It's M as in Mary, Ollette.
Great. Thank you.
Ms.
Okay.
Millette, before you begin, I just wanted, because you came in late, I just wanted you to know the applicant is not presenting parking tonight.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Okay, my issue, the bus stop is right.
Can you take the?
Ma'am, can you, yes,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
just so we can pick you up on.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
The bus stop is exactly right across the street and a little up. And it takes up this whole area right here. On this side, okay? Now, here is where you have the delivery point at Montclair Hotel, okay? There's only one way in and one way out, so all the trucks have to actually either back in or back out, okay? Now, let's look at here where the garage is. This is where the cars are gonna be coming in and out. So can you imagine a catastrophe right there? You have big delivery trucks coming in right here. And then you have your entry and exit to the building, right here, right next to that. So when they make a delivery here, it's not like they can go around. They can only back in and go forward out. So this right here is kind of messy. And
Is that where
across the
do they collect their garbage also from that same site?
Well,
Big
that's
garbage
another
trucks?
thing. We're starting to see rats.
What?
Yeah, we're starting to see rats. I'm not sure if it's from the debris from, when the hotel puts their garbage out or where it's at, but that's what we are actually starting to see. So, but this right here is messy. That right there, you have to actually drive down the street. And this is not to criticize anything, but it's to actually, the people who actually see what's going on and how it works versus what your plans are being presented.
But Ms. Millette, you didn't answer. Do garbage trucks also go in that same?
Absolutely. We hear
So
them
the-
at about 4 in the morning.
Everybody goes in that one
Yes,
uh,
that's it.
delivery and garbage trucks?
Yes,
Wow.
everything right there. Or it's just going to be really bad right there. And then, like I said, the bus stop is directly across the street, which
Wow.
is in between the block. So then you only have a small patch of parking, which is in front of our homes where we don't have driveways.
Is the bus stop in front of any of the homes? Or
The
does
bus-
it start after the homes?
It starts exactly right after the last home.
Okay, so that's kind of even with the garage, the opening of the garage. If I'm looking at a Google map.
I would say so,
Yeah,
yes,
so
sir.
it looks like it's, the last home is directly across the street from the garage opening.
Yes. So that's going to be
So
a
that's
lot of
directly across the
activity right
street
there.
from the cutout, the bus stop.
Yes. So I think it's going to be a little dangerous right there. And then my next question is this spot, does this belong to the building or is that public?
It wouldn't be a parking space. It's just a place to drop off where people could drop off or it's not for parking.
What about no trucks there, just cars, just car drop-offs? And the trucks would have to go on the orange, on the Central Verde side.
Yeah, that's
That's what's happening.
that's actually our intent, so we'd be fine with that condition.
Even trucks for the stores?
Yes.
Yes,
Everything.
we want no part of trucks parking in front of the building.
Yeah, see, I think if it's just cars, that, as Chair described, given reality of life today, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Mail deliveries, Amazon deliveries? Yeah.
No trucks.
No truck.
Well, a panel truck versus a van versus a mail truck, is that what are we
I
talking
think you
about?
might want to be specific
Yeah,
because the
yeah.
hotel is not too specific
Yeah.
about what
No, we're
parks
talking
across
about
the
Any
street.
commercial plate.
Yeah, the
Any
commercial
commercial.
trucks.
Any commercial plate would be in the loading zone
And
on
then
the
where
side.
do they park when they have work that's being done in the building? Where are
Yeah.
they going to park?
That was my question last
Good
time.
question.
I
Yeah.
believe that's on Central Verde Drive.
Building
Yeah.
or parking deck.
So the entrance to it's where it says MC Residences, that's the entrance, right in front of the cutout? So where are the mailbox, like, is there a concierge in there, are there mailboxes?
There's a mail room, if you look at the inside, there is a mail room, yeah, that you enter from the lobby.
So
I
the
believe,
Amazon
right?
truck is coming,
Got to go to the Central Verde
you have to
side,
go to Central Verde
right in there.
And then
and
would-
walk around?
Would walk around the building.
But there's no
Leave it up.
concierge, right? We didn't, you
Yeah,
know,
well,
is that
there's no
correct?
commercial trucks.
There's no concierge, so how is mail delivered?
You can't
They'll have a key.
Amazon package?
Yeah,
Figure that out.
from an operational standpoint, I
Yeah,
don't have
no.
full command on the, but
I just think it would be so much better if all that activity took place on Central Verde Drive, and this was one big plaza in front of this handsome building.
I like
Got
the
a-
drop off.
Got an elderly parent. People
Yeah.
Well-
block up South Fullerton where there's one lane now. They just sit there to pick up somebody coming from a doctor's
I agree with
office.
you, but I just think it's a flawed design to begin with. That the streetscape in front of the building should have been catered to real retail, and you could have a side entrance like some of our apartments do on Central Verde Drive, on the corner there for the residents. I mean, that's what Plofker did on his building. Yeah. The one on North Willow, yeah,
While we're on the drop-off subject,
yeah.
I think you were trying to get back to it, right? I noticed there's a conflict with the planters, where they're located relative to the seating area outside the building. So right now, to walk on in the plaza way, you'd be basically kind of towing the line between the planter and the seating, the tables arranged in that seating area. So at a minimum, with the curb cut staying, we should look to revise the planter locations and try to change that aesthetic a little bit there along the curb side of the planter.
yeah, we'll come back and
Yeah,
address
I mean,
that,
we'd
yeah.
have to look at it with the engineer from their site plan testimony.
Yeah,
But it looks like it's less than a 4-foot width perceived here between the planter and the edge of the change in treatment to the concrete. Where
yeah,
the-
I think I think the treatment in the concrete in this particular rendering is illustrated, so I don't think it's actually measured to.
Yeah, no,
to scale, but
I'm actually referring back to the site plan
I'm
in
sorry.
what I was looking at. to try to
Actually, and
confirm.
I think it may actually be the same issue there, but what we can do is we can speak to that to make sure that the concern is satisfied.
Right. So, I mean, if we were eliminating the bump out, you would have more of a clear, it's an 8-foot wide drop-off area, so you'd have that 8-foot picked back up in terms of the streetscape and two-way directional pedestrian traffic.
I'm not quite sure what you said. Could you say that again?
The wider sidewalk.
So the drop-off area is 8 feet wide.
Right.
If you align consistent with the far curb line and remove the drop-off area, then the planters and any associated streetscaping would offset with it more likely and allow for an 8 to 10 foot wide walkway area for the pedestrians outside of the seating area in front of the retail space down below.
So you're recommending that there not be a drop-off with the cars?
Well,
What you're saying? I'm quite,
no,
I'm trying to see which side you're
Well,
coming down on.
regarding either a drop-off or no drop-off, there's a design element that has to be looked
Oh,
at
okay.
pending the decision. I mean, both can be worked out in design flavoring, but right now, the way it's laid out is tight as presented with the two trees that sit on both sides of the drop-off area.
Okay. Because
Creates
my own-
a kind of a
yeah.
choke point while people are sitting at the tables outside of whatever retail space they're at there.
The reason why I asked is because my own opinion seemed to be leaning toward allowing 5-minute drop-off for
Right.
people who are using the building. And so I didn't want to be in
And
conflict with what
I
you were
think
saying.
some of the testimony the last time we were together was regarding the location of that seating and the township plan actually calling for it to be set away from the building as opposed to adjacent to the building. We'd gone back and forth with the applicant about the proximity of it and really the benefit of leaving it closer to the building in this application. But then on that far side of it, there is some conflict with the planner's streetscape.
My understanding is we can come back and speak to this, but my understanding is there's ample room to have a pedestrian
Yeah,
sort of
relocate
walkway,
and-
and we can move the planters or shorten up the planters to make sure we
Okay,
don't have a conflict.
because I was very much thinking that if the drop-off had some advantages, because it'll keep the traffic flow on
Agreed.
Orange Road much more smooth.
Agreed.
Flowing.
I agree with that.
I think that's about as good as you can.
All right, no, I appreciate it, thank you.
I do want to jump back to the transformer for a moment. I think it was last time, I'm looking at my notes again, there was a question about whether there's fumes that'll come from the transformer. Whether there will be fumes that come from the transformer?
There are no fumes.
No fumes. So you did check on that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you were going to look at what the noise levels are of these transformers that you anticipate here?
I didn't commit to that, but I'm going to ask.
Well,
my client.
that's actually what I wrote down, is that the applicant will determine and provide noise levels of the transformer.
We'll get it to confirm.
Okay, thank you.
Ross?
Mr. Ross?
I see your hand is raised. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And I don't think he needs to spell his last name. I think we're good. Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening. So you've heard the discussion?
Yes.
Just jump right in and
So I appreciate Mr. Minow and his efforts. Obviously, it's moving forward in a good way. And he did clarify that it was not stucco, it's white brick, which is great. So I guess the question became, why did it not wrap around then? Why do we still have the hardy board siding?
Or even the full metal panel on the far left, which again detracts in the same way we've seen on some other buildings. You know, I think the issue is not this, whether it's traditional versus more modernist, whether it's working. Please.
Correct. And it would be helpful to see the north elevation and even the rear elevation to some degree. You know, how the materials actually wrap around and, you know, what the full building looks like. Does it look like the same building as you go around the corner? Mr. Minow was very receptive to the brick corbelling as well, and that's really an effort on the red brick portions that you see, kind of corbelling at the top of each of those, so the central element and then the two towers on either end, and that's really to give a little more of a historic verticality to the building. It's only 4 stories high, but you know, with those details, your eye will kind of be drawn up to the top of the building. And so he said he'll be able to work on that a little more, and you know, as you can see, the design this time is much better, much improved.
So how do you feel about the metal panel on the far, the big section of metal paneling on the far left, and the composite materials on the Centro Verde side? We've seen how that metal paneling appears, as the chair noted, on the Montclair 2. It really doesn't work. It detracts from what the building is trying to do along the you know, Bloomfield Historic District. Do you think that that metal paneling on the far left going north adheres to section 4.2.1 or doesn't? And the same with the fiber cement paneling on the Centro Verde side. Does that adhere to those sections and the other sections in the plan that call for better matching into the whole downtown and historic area, or not?
So from what I'm aware of, those materials aren't specifically not allowed or disallowed. However, there's ways to obviously make them better. I think for the metal paneling, the darker the color, the better, because it resembles cast iron or something more traditional, a little bit better. Here it's like a dark bronze color. So as you can see, it's already with the white brick and the red brick and the cast stone, it's being mitigated a little bit, much more than it was in the beginning, which is a good thing.
Should there be less of it, given as the treatment on the far right, where it appears to be an accent piece as opposed to a whole block?
I think it does work better on the right as an accent piece, and the Juliet balconies, and then you have the storefront metal, and that's all fine. On the left, I'd say that goes to the point earlier made about the Centro Verde elevation, where it doesn't look as consistent with the main Orange Street facade. So that's a possibility that could be changed to something more traditional. I think consistency is really just the key. Consistency of the materials.
And the fiber cement panel, is that working or not?
So the fiber cement panel, this is the better detail than was done at Centro Verde, or the Valley and Bloom project. This is the recessed detail, which we've talked about before. So it's not the batten detail where it's something stuck on, and I know everybody's had issue with that as you see it, how it actually gets built and how it looks when you walk out there. So this is a more sophisticated detail of basically the same type of thing. My comment, which we've proposed on other projects here in front of the board, was about field painting the materials. I know that's a real pain to the owner and the contractor, but to try to get that matte finish so it doesn't look like kind of something right off the shelf, like a CVS store or something. And so it looks like something with a little bit irregularity to it, but that gives it kind of a texture and a material quality that older buildings have that I think people are used to seeing when they look up and see the building. And I discussed that with Stuart Johnson before Mr. Minow was involved, and he agreed that whatever colors are chosen, the more matte finish they are, that kind of hides the kind of that sheen that you see when the sun hits it, where that you don't want it to look like a plastic quality. So.
But short of that, is it your testimony that brick would work better in that location to maintain more consistency and to better match the overall feel of the building flavor as it relates to the entire downtown?
Of course. The white brick would be obviously a superior material choice. I think Mr. Minow already testified tonight why he didn't show that to begin with. I mean, the only other comment I could offer to kind of help it look kind of historic is on the same premise. When we did the Lululemon store in downtown, that was brick off the shelf, kind of laid out. It was full brick. Mr. Minow's right. The full brick veneer is much better than a thin brick, since it has that depth to it. And to make it look a little more authentic, we actually had them hand trowel every single one of the mortar joints. Of course, that building wasn't as big, but it just it has that feel when you look at it like it's always been there versus something.
Actually, on that point, I was my client clarified to me. Actually, the brick in this is full brick, but it's in the sense of it's actual full brick. It's not panels of full brick. It's full brick.
Full brick.
Yeah.
So you're recommending hand troweling in the for the mortar joints as a way of, even though they're using a veneer, as a way of giving it a further flavor of a downtown building that blends in? Is that your testimony?
That's up to the board. The main difference here is obviously the brick portions here are like a story up, so whereas Lululemon, you're right next to it. That does make a difference. And they are making the effort doing red brick. Obviously, it looks a lot more traditional now. I think everyone can agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
Any questions for Barton? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, well, we've heard from the board architect, we've heard from the applicant's witness. Does anybody in the public, such as it is, have any questions? All right. All right, so that's it for this evening?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That was both a statement and a question.
I think that's called a leading question.
Yeah. So the next continuation of this, Janice?
Be January 13th.
All right,
Is it the 15th?
13th.
13.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Same to you. Okay. So the application of Jonathan and Melissa Goidel has been carried to the January 27th meeting? February 10th. Very good. Very good. And that leaves us with our bills.
So am I correct that we have bills from last meeting in addition to bills for this meeting? Okay. I have no issues with the bills and would move to approve both sets.
A second.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great holiday. Have a great holiday and a happy new year, a safe new year. And we'll see you here next year.
Do we have a calendar for next year's meeting?